Hi, and welcome back to Education in Focus. We really hope you're surviving the summer holidays. Today, we're going to be thinking about preparing to go back to school, as we know that for both parents and children, this can be a really difficult time. Here with me today are our education experts, Jason and Lisa. Hi, both.
Hi, how you doing?
Hi, Leigh.
So, there's two different perspectives to consider here, isn't there? Whether it's a return to the same school or moving to a new school. Do you think that we can weave both throughout our chat today?
I think we can.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, in many cases, a lot of the advice will be very, very similar. Obviously, those who are changing school perhaps might feel slightly more anxious, but we do know that for many children, even returning to the same school but a different year group can invoke the same levels of anxiety. So I'm sure a lot of the advice is going to be suitable for both.
Yeah, 'cause I first thought, oh, it's going to be completely different. It's going to be completely different needs. But then as I thought about it more, well, actually, it's just magnitude of feeling, probably, isn't it? The difference. So if you go to a new school, yeah, it's going to be possibly bigger, but we don't know. Some children find every change of the year group very difficult.
We'll give it a go then. So, what is the starting point when we're thinking about that September term? Where do we start as parents? What do we think
Well,
about?
I think as obvious as it sounds, I'm still going to go out there with it first of all, is actually just have a chat with your child. For some children, they take these changes in their stride, and actually, a lot of the anxiety is held by parents and our worries and our fears and our hopes, for them. But also, just because a child is worried about returning to school, it doesn't mean that we can automatically assume what that worry might be about. For some children, it might be worries and fears around friendship groups. It might unfortunately be to do with bullying. It might be that they've heard that their new maths teacher is an absolute nightmare. So they're actually quite happy about everything. It's just that lesson once a week that holds some anxiety for them. For others, it might be, especially if they're going to a new school, they're worried about getting lost. Or it might be the sensory overwhelm of the lunchtime or the unstructured playtimes. So, really, just by kind of having a chat, informal, just dropping it into conversation and seeing how they respond is a really good starting point to kind of work out where your child is at and how much of the anxiety is held by you and the specifics that they're worried about.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And if you can get that from them, that's brilliant, isn't it? If you can get that kind of information from your child,
Mm.
some will obviously open up, and some find it harder to do that. And the word school, they can see them sort of be, they'll tense up physically, go, "Eh," and then just deflect and talk about something else, and you think, okay, it's going to tread around this one a bit more carefully. So yeah, I can imagine that's quite a challenge.
Something that we come back to so often, the whole kind of like pacey way of being. So that idea of curiosity and just kind of perhaps
Mm.
putting some questions to them that don't necessarily expect an answer, or perhaps even reflecting on how you felt and sharing, some of the fears and worries that you had, and just putting them out there and seeing if that's anything that they can kind of pick up on. If your child is particularly reluctant to talk about it, then maybe you can take the opportunity to chat to another adult, partners or family members, friends, and just kind of saying, "Oh gosh, do you remember how we used to feel in September? I was always a little bit anxious when I went to school. How did you feel when you?" And kind of have the conversation around the children is sometimes a way of getting it into their consciousness without directly putting any pressure on them to engage.
That's great. And sometimes things like we all know that car journeys and things are quite good, aren't they? Because you're not facing each other.
Yeah.
You're not sort of. It can sometimes be relevant if you go near the school. Oh, look, the school's just around there, isn't it? If you just happen to be going past it in the car, or you might accidentally engineer that. Yeah, that could just be an opportunity to just pop it in, maybe just gently, but don't push it, because you'll know if they're receptive to it or not. I mean, like we say all the time, that you know your children best with everything. Like you say, it's about stages, not ages, isn't it? So your child might be, I don't know, moving from year 4 to year 5, but emotionally they might be developmentally at an age where it's like reception to year 1, and they just need a little bit of a different way of looking at it. Or
Is there anything that we can do during this time of change to create some stability for our children? So, are there things that we could start doing now in the summer holidays to help them at all?
yeah, gosh, I hope they're not thinking too soon about schools. It's trying to balance, isn't it? When do you leave it alone, and when do you talk about it, and what is the right time? And there's no real answer to that, apart from the fact that perhaps past the halfway point, people start thinking about it. You can't avoid shops without as a back to school display almost as soon as holidays start. It's like, for goodness sake, leave it alone. But anyway, one of the best things I think you can do, and I suppose that parents know this anyway, that often our children benefit from a routine, even though they're not in their school routine. So if you've managed to keep some kind of routine going through the summer, that's going to help you anyway, because it's going to help the transition back to school. I mean, the more out of routine they become, the more difficult the transition back will be. But you can just have to work it in stages, I suppose. And if you haven't got a routine yet, you just let it all go. You just sort of slop around the house in your pajamas. Fine, it helps everyone relax. That's not a problem. It's just that if school's coming up in a few days' time, it's going to be a massive jump, isn't it, from sort of getting up when you like, eat when you want, to suddenly have to get up, get dressed, bang, 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 bang. Time, it just goes in such a hurry. Um, you might need to introduce a routine just in those weeks leading up to the start of school, if that's necessary. I mean, one thing I've done that anecdotally, but when we had our foster boys here, we just, because this is what teachers do, you have timetables, don't you? So we made up a timetable and just got sat with them and literally put every day of the whole holiday on a couple of sheets of paper, and then in a grid, and we were just writing things in that we knew we were doing, like, oh, we're going on a caravan holiday here, we're doing this here, and we're doing that there. So they could kind of see it and then say, well, all these gaps, what sort of things do you want to do? And then we'd say, well, days out here, visits some family here, go to the theme park, go to whatever, and cinema. So we just kind of pop them in various days, and then keep it on display, cross them off as the days are going, and they can see that school's creeping. Then as you get in towards the end of that, the days are getting crossed off, and they can see the school's getting a little bit closer. So then you can start to think, right, they can see it's coming, and then you can begin to drop it into the conversation. So I don't know if other people use timetables, but it's kind of helpful to see where you are and how long it is. If they start going, is it yeah? How long has it got school? Because they sometimes don't have a sense of time, and they might start getting anxious about it, even though it's weeks away.
And I like that idea because it can help kind of create stability as they move into it, because you can maintain that idea of like a timetable, like a visual timetable, or even if it's just like a few notes jotted down for perhaps older children, because you can start to emphasize the things that are going to stay the same. So it might be, we always have lasagna for tea on a Monday, or Nan comes to finish a visit on a Tuesday, we go swimming on a Wednesday, whatever it is. But if you kind of do have that timetable or that routine um, present towards the end of the holidays, you can take time to emphasize the things that are remaining when you move
Yeah,
back to school, because not everything's going to change. And also to kind of create that stability for them, you can think about school and think about, okay, so what things in school are going to stay the same? You are still going to have the same lessons, maybe. You are still going to have the same friends there, maybe. You are going to have your lunch at the same place, maybe. The uniform is going to be the same, maybe. So if you can highlight some things that are remaining the same um, from pre summer and post summer, then that will create a sense of stability for them amidst all the changes that have happened.
I think I've done that with a child before. I don't know if it was at home or whether it was in school itself, but literally got a piece of paper because there was a child who was just getting anxious about all these changes, and they were kind of getting overwhelmed, and they couldn't even see. They kind of everything felt massive. So it's a really good point, Lisa.
Mm.
So I think I just stuck a piece of paper, folded it in half, and said, right, these things are the same. What are things going to be different? And it turned
Mm.
out there was loads of stuff that said most of it's staying the same, and a few things are different. And it helped to balance that. It's like actually, it's not all changing. It might feel like everything's changing, like the earth shifting underneath your feet. That's not to say that the things are changing aren't big. There might be a few things, and they might feel quite big. So then you can look at them head on and hopefully reassure them. And like I said before, try and talk about what the feelings might be around those changes and how we can help.
I know I'm speaking as an adult here, but certainly every September when I went back, I'd feel a great deal of anxiety and about all the changes, and then within about 2 hours of being in a school setting, it felt normal. It felt, and I say that as an adult, but they do have a certain feel about them, schools, and you can very quickly fall into the rhythm. So yeah, emphasizing what's
Mm.
staying the same is useful.
Always as a teacher or whatever, I always felt the same. Oh God, it's school coming back. You get the same butterflies in your stomach, even though the people wouldn't believe you. Think, come on, it's just your job. You're doing it for years. You know this. It doesn't matter. There's all that sense of, oh God, what was it? I've got to be ready. I hope I've got everything ready that I need. And got to be up in time, and etc. etc. And it's all starts building up in your own head. So I can completely empathise how children might be feeling as well.
I think another thing that's going to help create a bit of stability for them is taking time to kind of explicitly emphasize that their family is their secure base, and that isn't going anywhere. Okay, we might be spending a little bit less time together, but we're still going to be there in the morning. We're still going to be there after school. We're still always there for them. And if that's something that your child struggles with, then perhaps using something like the Invisible String storybook or the workbook that accompanies it is useful. Even if you used it in the past, it might be an ideal time to revisit it, just so we are reinforcing those messages that your secure base does not change.
Mm.
It's still us and we are there. Some children might want to think about some transitional objects to take into school with them. So, if they are feeling a bit anxious, perhaps thinking about what those objects could be, what would they like to have. Um, Certainly for some objects and for some children, you might need to have conversations about when they can get them out, when they can't get them out, and
Mm.
maybe communicating it with teachers that they're going to be taking these things in.
Yeah.
But a great deal of security and stability is created for our children by remembering that their family, their adults, aren't abandoning them. So a little bit of time, those weeks before returning to school would be, that'd be time well spent, wouldn't it?
Um, I think, like you say, some of these activities are quite helpful. If they are feeling anxious, it's helpful to try and divert that energy somehow, isn't it? And again, some things that I've tried before that kind of help is getting them to do some activities around about themselves, saying things. If it's a new teacher, for example, which often it will be, it's they have to say, well, what would you like the teacher to know about you? And even though they might have done know about me, sort of transition activity in school, it will be different if it's done with you at home. And you can sit side by side doing an activity, a bit of crafty, drawing a picture of their favourite things, whatever it is, so that knowing it's going to be given to their teacher on the day they come back to school, even on the inset day before the child comes to school, if you want. Um, and sort of helps them to talk about themselves. And in those activities, sometimes you can have these conversations that feel a bit less stressful, maybe, because you're just having it sort of feels natural a bit more, and you're talking about school in hopefully a positive way, talking about them in really positive ways, and saying, oh, Carl, your teacher's going to be so lucky to have you because then there's going to be nobody who's going to be able to do whatever. Let's say silly little things like someone who can organise the books, someone who puts out the things in the morning, someone who keeps the pencil sharp. I'm talking about primary school here, of course. Um, but sometimes some children they need to feel useful and wanted. That's the most important thing. And simple things like the teacher knowing that these children might like being given jobs to do and having a responsibility. So the things that they might be good at organising, they might be good at putting things away, or might be good at watering plants, whatever. It's just something they could be involved in, and remind them that's the thing they're going to be there to help do. And you're going to be really useful, and this sort of school needs you. They do without you, kind of stuff. So helping to feel that
Mm, yeah.
they've got something to offer.
Going back to something you said early on then about sometimes diverting a bit of that anxiety, it can be quite a nice idea to also perhaps put something for them to look forward to in the calendar, in the diary, like after the return to school, to kind of like just reinforce that message. Life doesn't end after this big change, it still continues. And, we spoke about having the normal things continuing the routine. But actually, having something to look forward to on the horizon is always a good way of diverting a little bit of anxiety. I know it's going to be
Mm.
difficult, sweetheart, but actually, in 4 sleeps, we're going to go and do this, that, and the other, whatever it might be. For older children, so thinking about secondary school, you know, certainly some of the older children I work with, they worked in half terms. So they had their plan of the 6 or 7 weeks. They kind of knew what it looked like. They knew how many times they had to get up, how many lessons they were going to have for certain subjects, but they knew what they were looking forward to at the end of that time. Obviously, that's not going to work for younger children. You might be thinking, okay, 3 sleeps, 4 sleeps, 5 sleeps, kind of length of time. But
Mhm.
just a nice little activity. Oh, we're going to go to the petting zoo. Oh, we're going to go trampolining. Oh, we're going to do something. We'll go out for tea, whatever it might be. But life doesn't stop after this big change. We're still going to have some things to look forward to. Because that's also something that many children worry about. Their anxiety can stem from it's not going to be fun anymore. I'm not going to have anything nice to do because I've got to go back to school. And actually, we can do nice things around school. So yeah, putting something in the diary might be an idea.
Yeah, sometimes having a play date, if you can, with someone who they're going to be in class with or know they're going to be in school with, is quite nice, especially getting near to school, because that conversation about school alongside that child's parents, you and that parent could have that conversation, like you said, in the background with the children sort of playing together, hopefully. Um, but maybe just sort of helping them to feel, oh gosh, we're all feeling in it together. But look, so and so can't wait to come to school with you. We're going to walk together or whatever. If you can walk to school, great. Um, and meet each other at the gate. Make arrangements like that so that the other child's going to see you at the gate when you both walk into school across the playground together. Whatever, something that they can think, oh, that'll be nice, something to look forward to when I get there. There'll be a smiling face as soon as I get there. In fact, thinking about school gate, I remember one thing we did that again, it's just an anecdotal thing. I don't know if it helps, but it did help our two, which was we just sort of went on a bike ride along the route that we would bike or walk to school because luckily we could. And just looking at things as we went past, like there was some ducks in the just sort of little things to make the journey feel pleasant, and then we could see the gate, looking through the gate, looking at the field, playground, and just making it all sound really interesting and hopefully exciting. Not overly excited, obviously, but hopefully positive enough. So they could then hopefully lead us almost. So when it came to the going to school, kind of say, oh, "What? Which way to go? Which way? Oh yeah, that way. Come on, you tell us which. You go in the front, then you tell me which way to go." Maybe no relevance to anyone else, but you just don't know, do you? Everyone's different.
No, I certainly do think that like practicing that journey to school can be really, really beneficial. Again, I'm kind of perhaps thinking about older children here. Certainly in secondary school, some children might have to
Yes,
get public
yes.
transport for the first time. They might be walking alone for the first time. Um,
Yeah, I was gonna say, would you encourage them to sort of arrange with other children that they could walk together with?
oh, 100%, definitely. I think it helps massively if they can walk or go on public transport with someone else because otherwise the mornings can be really bleak. But if you've got to meet someone, that encourages you to get up and get out the door, doesn't it? And it's something to look forward to, having a chat and complaining about the homework or stealing one another's homework is something that we saw quite a lot. But that's all part and parcel of growing up, isn't it? And all part and parcel
Yeah,
of the commute. But for many children, they could be very anxious about their journey to school. So actually giving them an opportunity to practice it either with you, or without you, but kind of with you monitoring the background, kind of it's going to reduce the level of anxiety for them, isn't it? So yeah, I think that is really really, really important. And I liked what you said also about picking things out along the way, because you can do that just from like an interest point of view. But if anxiety levels are really high, then there is that kind of like classic technique. Can you focus on five things that you can see, four things that you can hear, three things you can touch, two things you can smell, and one thing that you can taste? Because that really helps to kind of ground you. Um, so I suppose whether it's a younger child or an older child, if you can kind of get them to focus on their senses whilst doing that journey, then that can help them if they are feeling a little bit out of kilter.
I think it's important as well as parents to kind of start preparing yourself for September and all of the emotions that you're going to feel as a parent. If they're moving to a new school, that's a really stressful, emotional time as a parent. You're probably going to be really tired because now you've got the morning routine to start doing again and the joys that that brings. I think it's recognizing that as a parent, you might have some big feelings popping up too.
yeah,
Oh, massively. Yeah, 100%. I think it's very difficult because we fall into our own routines over the summer. However, that might have looked. You might be trying to balance childcare and working full time, or you might have had the time off with your children. But either way, it's going to be a shock to the system. And then added all the emotions that are going on as well. And I think we can put ourselves under a lot of pressure to just kind of crack on with it and kind of get organized, and we don't think about the emotions that are involved. So, I think it might be a good idea to perhaps think about how you can take things a little easier yourself.
Mm.
If your work is flexible, is it possible to perhaps start late a couple of mornings just so that you have taken that pressure off those first few morning routines back to school? If you can't do that, then it might be a case of trying to be a little bit organized and perhaps doing lunches and packing bags the night before, again, to kind of take the pressure off. Or maybe if you're able to make some meals, put them in the freezer
Mm.
so you don't have to worry about cooking on the first week back. Anything to kind of alleviate the load. And, ask your support network, your friends and families, just say, okay, we've got a bit of a change coming up. It's all going to be a bit manic. I might need a little bit of help.
mm,
Um, but also just don't try and overfill your calendar. What we
Hmm.
haven't mentioned so far is that a lot of extracurricular clubs start at the same time as schools start. So you go from 0 to 100 miles an
Yeah,
hour pretty much overnight. And if you're chasing here, there, and everywhere, um, don't try and add in too many extra things. Early nights, good sleep, food in the freezer, trying to get bags packed and lunches done the night before. All of that is going to help, and leaning on those around you.
yeah, definitely. And it's also hard, isn't it? Because you've got to acknowledge your own feelings, and at the same time, you don't want your feelings to sort of somehow leak onto the child, and then they become anxious
Yeah.
because they can see it in your eyes, the sense of
Mm.
fear. It's really hard to keep that away. We know, sort of faking it. At the same time, there's also a bit of healthiness in both acknowledging a bit of nerves and saying,
Mm.
"No, I was a bit nervous last time when you first went to your school or whatever, but that's okay. We're both going to work through this together. That might be the way it works for you. Or it might be that both doesn't help at all, and the child can't bear to see you looking anxious. In which case, you need to just keep the smile and the sort of swan across the water with the legs and the flapping underneath. Um, so I don't know. It depends on everybody and the situation you're in. I mean, you might be someone listening to this might be thinking, "Oh, it's all right. My kids can't wait to go back to school. They'll be skipping out that door. Great, lucky." I mean, that might be people in that position, which is amazing.
Yeah.
But I don't
Yeah,
think it's
it's
the case for
brilliant.
everybody.
And that's a really interesting point that you raise as well, because sometimes, you know, as parents, we can put ourselves under a lot of pressure because we're comparing to peers. Um, and, you know, some parents will be in that very lucky position where the kids are jumping and ready to go and can't wait to go back. And yes, brilliant. And I don't want to detract from that at all, because that's fantastic. But, if your child isn't like that and you do see other children that are doing that, it's okay. Every child is different. Every child develops differently. As we mentioned before, it's developmental stage, sorry, rather than the chronological
Yeah.
age. And the other thing to bear in mind is, okay, children, regardless of whether they're adopted or not, all children, they might need a little bit more support in those early
Mm,
weeks. But if we
mm,
put that
Mm.
in, we can gradually lessen it. It doesn't have to be um 100% support for the next academic year. It can be reduced if we kind of get going and do it sensitively in the first few weeks. So yeah,
mm.
I think the
So
main
is
point I was trying to make there was don't compare to others.
Yeah, it's
It's
really tough.
okay.
yeah.
I think it's even harder because you might have a situation where you might have siblings where there's one who is keen to go back and one who's dreading it in the same household.
Mm.
And that's going to be difficult. When we make comparisons between them either.
No. So I kind of just going back, I think, Lisa, to your point of thinking about developmental stage and not chronological age and support. Is it better then to kind of plan more support than we think our child might need at school and kind of throw it all in there, or and then lessen it, as you said, or is it better to wait and see and try and put things in place as they go along?
It's a really fine line to tread, because what I don't want to do is be putting parents under additional pressures and
Yeah,
saying you must do this and you must do that and you've got to find time to do this, because we all know it's a really fine balance,
yeah,
isn't it, between getting everything done and staying happy, healthy, and on the right track yourself.
of course.
But I would say possibly err on the side of caution, and do what you feel that you can do to help. And for some families, just having to think about it and just being mindful of their children will be enough, and that will be it. Just the fact that you have it on your radar, that's something that they might need support with, something they might need a little bit of extra TLC, a little bit of a cuddle if they're feeling a bit wobbly. Maybe their favorite dinner one night, just to kind of let them know that you're thinking of them, and that will be enough. But for others, they might need to think, okay, let's try and organise a play date so they get to see a friendly face and they know that friendly face is waiting for the school. Let's practice the journey to school. Let's have some conversation.
Mm.
Let's do, so it is a fine line, but just try and have it in your mind and think about all the ways you can help before deciding kind of which one to go with. But yeah, the hope would be that whatever you're doing to support initially, you'll be able to step it down as the days and weeks progress and they become more comfortable or more stable in their new environment.
Well, just you were talking then, Lisa. I was thinking. I think I would edge or err on the side of caution as well. I would say if you've got ideas up your sleeve for things to support that might be available if you need it, it's best to feel prepared for that, because if you don't, the other alternative is you then responding to a situation when it starts to go wrong, and that's what you don't want to be in. I mean, things might go wrong anyway, and things might not go perfectly and smoothly, because that's just life. But if at least you've got an idea, well, if this happens, we'll do that, but we hopefully won't need to. And so that's ready, isn't the back, sort of the back stage B or plan B or something. So that probably does help take some stress
I'm
off.
really glad you said that because I think you've just crystallized the thoughts that were in my head. And I don't think I articulated them properly. But yeah, it's being prepared, isn't it? Have some things up your sleeve so you're not reacting when things have gone wrong. You're kind of getting in before it gets too bad and you're not being caught unawares. No. Thanks, Jason.
So I think we've touched on some really good points, about practically getting ready, thinking about emotions, ways that we can start to prepare children to get back to school. I suppose I'm wondering, how do we prepare them emotionally, or have you got any ideas how we prepare them emotionally or logically for things that might happen at school? It's not just about getting to school, is it? What might happen on that first day back, how they might feel. Have you got any ideas?
Well, I think there's a whole load of books out there. If you just Google, returning to school stories, there are some really lovely ones for all different ages. And they can cover like what happens in the school day and all the emotions that it might throw up. And those are really lovely. Um, I can't recommend any one because there's so many of them out there, and it will depend on the interest of like your child and also their age and their developmental stage. Um, to be fair as well, you can always make up your own. At the moment, I am literally just our evening stories are me telling my daughter about a girl who coincidentally has the same name as her and also is coincidentally going to be doing exactly the same thing as she's doing tomorrow. And this girl has an absolutely amazing day and she really enjoys it and everything goes really, really well. And so the stories don't have to be that inventive, but they can just kind of talk a child through what their day might look like with a bit of a positive spin. And then if anything kind of comes up as a result of that story, you can talk about it. So that's one idea, is using either pre-written or made up stories to kind of help them think through the coming days. But another good idea, which I know makes a lot of people feel very uncomfortable, is that idea of kind of like role playing. There's a certain amount of etiquette about returning after a break. We see it in the workplace as well, but you have all of those, oh, how was your holiday type questions, or, did you do anything nice? And you might be meeting people you've never met before, you've only met once or twice before. So, many of our children do struggle in those types of social situations. So perhaps kind of having an opportunity to think through, if someone asks you how your holiday is, how do you respond to that? And what kind of questions can you ask them in return to kind of help them facilitate that kind of dialogue, that kind of making friends, getting to know people. um, they might be very, like I said before, children's anxieties can range, but they might not know what they call their teacher. They might not
Mhm.
know how to talk to them. And so, again, just kind of role playing a couple of those types of conversations. What do you say when you first go into your science lesson? You're not sure where to sit, or, what can you say in those situations? So, that's a
Yeah.
possible idea as well. Is there anything that you can think of, Jason?
No, I think that could work in for younger children too. They might want to role play. It's going to be things like how you come into the school, yeah, and how to come to the classroom. Hopefully, they've had those things at the end of the summer term, but it can feel like a long time ago. Might still worry that they've got it wrong. I would hope that the schools provided some kind of transition book that, especially for a lot of our children who need them. We've talked about this in one of our other podcasts, haven't we, about transitions and things. I think we've said before, if you don't get one and you think you need one, ask for one. So because you can go back to those things and look through the pictures and then, oh, that's Miss So and So. She's going to be helping. She's the teacher. This is the. Oh, that's where the water bottles go, and that's where you hang your coat. Because often they'll put photos of those sort of things in the booklet. The website's quite helpful sometimes too, because it might have pictures of the classrooms or the staff. Yeah, so that can help, and a little bit of role play if the child can cope with it. That's great. Swap roles as well. Met them with the teacher. See what happens if you ask them. It's okay. You put it over here. Just see if they can. No, but sometimes it might
Yeah.
work. They might like it that way around because they might like to be in that position instead of the one who's not sure.
That's a really nice idea. I like that.
Swap it around a bit and just have a bit of fun with it if you can.
Absolutely.
don't over egg it. If it's just one thing, it might just where to put your water bottle, where to put your coat. That's it. End of whole role play. That may be enough. You don't have to do that the full hour set with the entire routine. I don't know. It depends on how they feel. Or use teddies. They can use teddies for the children, and they can be the teacher. And I don't know. There's lots of ways of thinking
Yeah.
about it that might help.
Just because you've mentioned water bottles and coats and bags and stuff, I mean, I feel like I need to say something, even though I struggle to do this myself. Um, although there's a lot of new purchases,
Yes.
isn't there, for the start of a new school term? So you've got all your uniform, you've got all the stationery and equipment, and it's a really good idea if your child is feeling any kind of level of anxiety about this to
Mm.
kind of try and get them involved in that. Are there things that they can choose? Can they choose a pencil case? Can they choose their bag? I know that uniforms are restrictive, but do they prefer to have, a pullover or a cardigan? Is it shorts? Is it trousers? And I'm sure you'll know these things already about your child, but actually getting them involved. The reason I say I struggle to do it is because I'm the queen of going to the supermarket for the weekly shop and then kind of adding in a couple of shirts, a couple of skirts the week after. And so it can be difficult, but perhaps if you can take them out for an hour towards the end of the
Mm.
holidays and get them to choose their stationery, then there's that level of excitement, isn't there, for kind of, oh, I get to use my new
No.
pencil, or is that
No.
just me who gets excited about stationery? I don't know. It
It
is one of
is.
the joys
And
of
I think,
September, isn't
if
it?
you're a parent
So
feeling quite isolated about the stress of going and doing that shop, you only need to go to Ryman's the week before September and you will find a whole collective group of parents who are also
having the same stress.
feeling exactly the same. So the safety in numbers. Um,
You've at you've just reminded me of something else actually saying going, taking them shopping. Because like another advantage of that is that you could actually, if you were able to give them a budget,
mhm,
and you can let them spend a little bit of time spending their budget. Now, I'm not saying that we need to be practicing school skills in order, I'm not coming at it from like an academic progress point of view, but we all know that skills, if you've not used them, they've gone a little bit rusty over the six
yeah,
weeks. And, if we can help reduce any anxiety or any shame that they might feel when they're in the classroom and they're being asked to read or write or do some mental maths or do some addition, if we can reduce that kind of for them by getting them just to practice some skills gently on the run up to the school term,
yeah,
that'll be helpful because we all know, hopefully we know, hopefully we had reports, we had parents' evenings at the end of the term, so we know where they were at, but they will have lost something
Yeah.
over the summer
mm,
just because they've not practiced. That's okay, but a bit of gentle practice, can they read a menu? I'm thinking of, younger children. If you go them out, can you get them to read the menu? Can you get them to work out what the change would be from a pound? Can you, any of that kind of stuff? Just get them just to practice a little bit, and that will help them ease back in, and when they're put on the spot, which hopefully they won't be, but they might be, and they'll it won't be so far in their mind.
That's where baking's always good, isn't it? If you can do a bit of
Yeah,
baking, cooking, recipes, measuring, just brings it back again.
yeah.
Jason, you mentioned the transition book, and I know we spoke about that on an earlier podcast, but it made me think: are there things that we can do to work with school at the start of that new school year? So you mentioned the transition book. We've spoken briefly, kind of about an all about me book. Is there anything else that we can do or we can look at?
Well, I think it's important to, I would say, I think I've said this before about being proactive sometimes. It might need be worth reminding the school, particularly an email, the attention of the primary here, the attention of the class teacher about your child, about some of the important things. They might have had these discussions in the
Mhm.
summer term. They might have had a quite a useful chat with the previous teacher, and then that might have been passed on, but it might not, and it might not be the
Yeah,
forefront of the teacher's mind because they've got so much else to think about. But you know that if your child has a smoother start because your teacher's aware of certain small things that make a big difference, then it's going to be everyone's going to benefit in the long run, aren't they? So it might be worth just putting a polite, "Oh, I know, hope you had a lovely holiday. Just thought, there's a few things that really help because I know that sometimes it can be really difficult. Almost putting it from the point of view of helping the teacher, so it doesn't feel like a nag. But at the same time, you want to be clear that the school is aware of
yeah,
certain things that know that they need to be aware of. Certain ways of speaking that your child will respond better to. Certain phrases that don't. Certain conversations that might trigger them. Um, again about discussions about family. Um, if they start talking about how your holiday was and have your time aside with your family, and just being aware of how it might be perceived by your child if it's likely to be a sort of slight trigger point, and sort of strategies that have helped, or even a little bit of if it's been a difficult summer, because it can be can be quite intense when you're back in the house together. Just letting them know it's been quite hard. They might be a bit unsettled, a bit wobbly, but we'll try and work together. Just be aware. So I think the more you can
Mm.
prepare the school, then it's better. Don't just assume that they're going to remember things. They'll all be ready because that you're being a bit of a pain or something by just being asking for extra special treatment, but you're not. You're just asking for what's right for your child. Because ultimately, it
Yeah.
really makes a difference.
Yeah, I'd second it for secondary schools, but I would just say instead of the class teacher, you're looking for the form tutor. That would be the
Mm,
person in the first instance to kind of disseminate any information amongst the other people that teach your child or children. So I just wanted to put
yeah.
that in.
And if it is always a tricky time of year for your child, if you know from previous years September's always been a bit difficult, they've been unsettled and they've been challenging, and you know that it's likely to happen again, you can sort of plan ahead again and say to the teacher, look, it has been difficult in the past. Here's the information you might need to be aware of. I want to work together with you so we can try and help it mitigate as much of this as we can. Would you want to meet with me after school on the first week back? Do you want to have a regular catch up? What would be work best? That or um, feeding back. If the school's got sort of systems where they feed back to parents, that's quite helpful, like some Dojo or other systems where they can drop a note during the day about your child, because if you've got something positive to say about your child that's happened the day, you can then start the conversation off at the end of the day at home time with that. Hey, I understand you did, this day. Well done. That was really amazing, child. How did you know? So it
Yeah.
might just be straight away. So something, even if they've had a difficult day, things haven't been all together brilliant. You can start off with at least something positive to.
I was just
Yeah.
thinking about how to work with schools, on that return. And a big thing for secondary school age children is going to be kind of summer holiday homework, because the chances
Mm.
are it will have been set, and the chances are that many children will have forgotten about it or just pushed it to one side because it's the holidays, and that's okay, that's all right. But I'm just thinking that if possible, if you're not aware of any work that they've had, perhaps having a conversation before the night they return to school might be useful just to help avoid the meltdowns, and for some
Mhm.
families they might decide that actually that is not a priority for us. Summer holidays have been
Yeah.
challenging, or perhaps they've been absolutely amazing and you want them to have another couple of weeks of absolutely amazing, guilt-free, time. Like
Mm,
that is okay. I'm not here to say they must do their homework, but actually, you can take that pressure away from the child to say, that is okay. I am saying it is okay for you not to do it, and I will communicate that to the school. To
yeah.
so they don't have to go in with those nerves and that anxiety about what's going to happen to me because I've not done it. No, the adult has made the decision. The adult has communicated the decision. They will deal with it. So yeah, either encouraging them to do it if you think that's right for them, perhaps giving them a bit of time to do it, or actually just taking that decision away from them and supporting them with it would be useful. Because that last night when you realise, there's hours of work you've not done, it's a horrible, horrible feeling. I've done it myself. So yeah,
God, yeah, that's a good point. You don't want that.
no.
I think a lot of things that we've spoken about today have been about preparing our children, preparing ourselves. So we go into the start of that academic year thinking quite positively. Is there anything else that you think would help our children or us with thinking positively about September?
I think there's loads of positive things that come with a new academic year. There's lots of opportunities that are on the horizon. For some, they might have their first residential trip this year, or might not be their first, but it might be a big one. Perhaps it's a ski trip or a trip to France. So actually reminding the children that alongside the hard bits, there's also a lot of good that comes from it is really useful. It might be that their music lessons are restarting and they really like their violin, so that would be a great thing. It might be that your school organises a Halloween party that is the highlight of the social autumn calendar, and it's reminding them that going back to school is a necessary evil in order to get the good things that come as well. We have got
Yeah.
Christmas on the horizon. For some, that is stressful, but for others it's something that's really, good and fun to look forward to. So just reminding them that positives come with it. They might also have been thinking that they want to try a new thing. Maybe they're finally old enough to join the drama club, or maybe there's a new production that they want to audition for. So there are good things. So that's nice. Thinking about what's good. But another thing that's helpful is actually reminding children of tough things that they've overcome in the past. You know, learning to swim, learning to ride a bike, maybe how they felt this time last year, and then reminding them that they overcame it, that they are strong enough, they are resilient enough, they will be okay. Reflecting on their successes and helping them see all the skills that they have allows them to know that they're not ill-equipped for this change that's coming.
Yeah.
And if there was a case where they felt anxious about friendships, people being unkind to them, and you managed to support them through that, you can, again, like you said, you can remind them if they're still worried about that happening again. So it did happen, didn't it? But how we get it sorted? And then, did I help you? Yes. Did it stop? That can help reassure, hopefully. If anyone wants to look at anything online, I know Lisa's mentioned there are some great books to search for, but there are some links as well, which we'll put onto the info with this podcast. So hopefully they're specifically little booklets and information for parents, for adoptive parents anyway, about how to manage that return to school. So it might help.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks, Jason and Lisa, and thank you to everyone who's given this episode a listen. We really hope it's given you some useful ideas to take into the new school year. Remember that you can contact us at any time at education@adoption-focus.org.uk. And if you can, please leave us a review. Thank you. Bye.